everyone. Welcome to Parent to Parent Tips for When Your Child Has Congenital Heart Disease. This is our first ever Heart Center live streaming event for parents. So we thought what better time to host this event than during Heart Month. We're so happy you could join us today. My name is Casey Powell. I'm an Associate Marketing Manager for the Heart Center here at Boston Children's. And I'm honored and excited to be moderating today's webinar. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available for sharing and viewing after it's over. We're also currently streaming to Facebook Live to reach as many current or potential patient families as possible. We will be opening up for Q&A at the end of the webinar, so feel free to send in any questions to our panelists throughout or at the end. We won't be addressing any clinical related content. But if you have any clinical related questions throughout, we'll point you in the direction to the correct contact information for your needs. We are so lucky to have two Heart Center moms with us today to share what they've learned throughout their sons' journeys with congenital heart disease. They've been in your shoes and have a wealth of knowledge on how to navigate a CHD diagnosis, hospital care, and life after surgery. So Allie and Britt, if you could both introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your stories and how you two met, that would be a great place to start.
Yes, I think first we just want to welcome everyone, all the parents who joined us today. And, we want to say that, you're just starting on this journey. We've been in your shoes for that part. And if you feel like, I don't know where to turn, I feel lonely in this diagnosis, I don't know where to go, we've been in those shoes. And then just so you know, we've been in the shoes when you wake up and you like the next morning and you get out of bed after you know all this stuff about your child and you go, I will do anything to save my child. I will move mountains. I will find the best care that I can to do this. We're also have been in those shoes and then even post that, so post surgeries. And I think we're going to discuss that today. And, we just want to say to you, when you join BCH as a family, and you not only get a medical team, but you get a second family and you get some of the best friends you'll ever have. And I think that's kind of how Britt and I met. I think it'll be discussed a little bit in a question we have from Casey, but the way I met Britt was I put out there what was going on with my child and where we were going for surgery. And a mutual friend connected us because Britt was then pregnant with her heart warrior, Evan. And what we want today to be is kind of us pretend like we're meeting for coffee, which is what Britt and I did. So pretend you're meeting your friend for coffee. And we met with each other. And since that day have been, the best of friends, and our sons are the best of friends. And we can't believe at times that we're seeing them, out in her backyard playing, because we never thought that could, be maybe 5 years ago. So anyway, Britt, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell about Evan.
All right, thanks, Allie. My name is Britt Schreiber, and I live in Connecticut. I have 5 children. Of those 5 kids are identical twins, and one has tricuspid atresia, which is also known as half a heart. And I met Allie through a friend in town, and honestly, without Allie, I would have been completely lost. I think I would have found Boston Children's on my own eventually, but she steered me there and directed me there. And I'm so glad that we ended up there, because I don't think my son would be doing as well if we had gone somewhere else.
Yeah, and I'm Allie Marcus. I also have 5 children. Unbelievably, one of them may ask for a snack while we're on here. And we want to let you know also, we're moms here in a pandemic. When we were rehearsing yesterday, I was in pajamas and Britt was pumping for her new baby daughter, Eliza. So it's relaxed and real, and we want you guys to feel that way. This is not an administrative meeting. It's not a medical meeting. It's just friends talking and telling you why there really is no other choice when it comes to your child. We're probably going to cry a lot too, like children. But West, when I was 19 weeks pregnant, I got the general anatomy scan, and I knew right away something was wrong. There was a black hole where the heart should be. And obviously we found out later he had a complete AV canal and a common valve, and he had no walls at all. So Dr. Del Nido actually couldn't even patch. He had to use tissue from his heart to actually make the walls. And we always say he was the architect of our son's heart. He rebuilt it. Then when Dr. Del Nido was in surgery, he realized that West also had a rare disease. About 1 in 100,000 children have it, called heterotaxy. And he had left atrial isomerism, which is you get 2 left atria and no sinus node. The sinus node beats our heart. So at some point he may need a pacemaker, but right now we're seeing that he doesn't. And then he also needed to have LAD surgery. But we'll talk about, we had to do that in Paris because we were living in Europe. And Boston Children's, when I say a second family, we have had them throughout everything that we've had to do. We were living in Europe for 4 years, and they were there finding everyone for us there that was the expert there, so we could get the best care there. And both Evan and West are now thriving, but we also always have to be at our appointments twice a year. And Britt has even more appointments with West. You have Evan. But anyway, that's kind of like the small background on both boys, but we can probably get to the questions. And because I'll probably keep talking about wonderful things at Boston Children's and why.
That's why we have Casey here.
Yes, we have Casey.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for those introductions. So I'll get started. I know we have a lot of questions to get through. The first one on our list was, how will I leave behind my other children when my heart baby needs surgeries? Or how do you know whether you or your spouse should be at the hospital with your child?
Okay, I'll take the first part of this one and then Britt can go. What we did was we had shifts of people. So we had my mom come for the whole time, but my dad would then take shifts over for her because we had 4 kids at home. And also our babysitters. So we had a group of babysitters that also came and helped on shifts as well. And then best friends would come and take our children for play dates. And then our 2 oldest boys would also go on like fun sleepovers. But what I would say is backup. You want backup. So just in case you're going to be there longer than they say. I think Britt can go on more of a long-term stay. We didn't have a long-term stay there, but she was there for a longer time, and she can talk about what you do for that.
Yeah, I think for me, part of it was, how do I keep my children safe when I'm not home? I have a really hard time leaving my kids and, hoping they're okay. But what we did, I had to move to Boston when I was about 34 weeks pregnant because Evan was supposed to have open heart surgery at birth. So I was really worried about who was going to take care of them, who would drive them to school. So my mom was a huge help. She actually moved with me to Boston because had I gone alone, I would probably have to deliver alone. And I did not want to deliver alone. I didn't know what would happen after Evan was born. So having my mom there was huge. And then back at home with my 4-year-old and 2-year-old were my husband and a babysitter and a lot of friends. So a lot of my friends would come and pick up the kids for their extracurricular activities. But for me, the biggest part was emotionally, how could I leave them for that long? And that really tore me up. But the moment you kind of get everything together and you leave, you put your blinders on and you focus on your heart baby because that heart baby needs you a little bit more at the time. And as soon as you get back home with the kid, with your other children, they don't remember. Like a day later, like everything is completely back to normal, and they don't hate you for it. Or
yeah, we talked about this yesterday, Britt and I. We were like, don't let that stress take you away from what you have to do for your child that needs the help.
They'll be okay.
They'll be okay. And also, if you need, I wrote something, I think if we had needed longer term, we probably would have, which is the next question, we would have gotten long-term housing there, and I would have brought the kids with me.
So maybe that's a good segue to the next question.
Yeah, my husband was with me too for the time. So he did come with me, and we had my mom and everybody. So yeah, I think for number 2, we can go.
Sure. Yeah, that leads perfectly into number 2. Where will we live when your heart warrior needs to be at the hospital for short or extended periods of time?
Ali, since you were answering it, do you want to start?
Yeah. Yes. So Casey is, I believe, sharing the link for all the housing options so you can have it in one place. I think one of the hardest things for me when I was first navigating 5 years ago was I was pulling things from so many different areas and going on Facebook to, grew up in Cape Cod. So I was going on Facebook to who has housing in Boston for us. And so we wanted to give you that link that there are so many options now. So the Inn at Longwood is the closest, and Britt's been there many times. We had to end up at the Sheraton because there wasn't room at the Inn at Longwood, and my husband stayed there while I slept with our son at the
I
hospital.
think that's the only hotel, and correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, that you can walk to the hospital, right? Is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Holiday Inn, there's a Marriott, and then there's obviously the Yawkey Family Inn and the Devon Nicole House, and then Ethan Lindbergh Foundation, which also does long-term housing for families that know they're going to be there a long time, and help with all those costs. And then also for ICU, NICU, cardiac ICU, there are 26 sleep rooms and then showers available. And that's so important in that time. They are first come, first serve, but there was usually one available. And it's so important, especially in that ICU time, that you feel like yourself, that you get a nap, that you self-care. I think there's not a question in here about self-care, but I will just say it's so important, because what is that saying on an airplane? You have to have your oxygen before you give it to your children. And it's so true in things like this. You have to be so, like blinders, Britt said, and you have to be fed and showered and have had a nap to be the best advocate you can for your child, whether it's just showing them that you're smiling, post-surgery, so they are less stressed. Anyway, so Britt, if you want to talk any more about.
I mean, Allie touched up on most of the places that to stay when you're, at Boston Children's, but another option is Airbnb and VR, was it MO?
VRBO.
VRBO. And for me, when I had to move to Boston and I was there for an extended stay, I just started to tell a lot of my friends about what was going on. And it so happened where I spin, the owner of the spin place, who I didn't know at the time, her parents own an apartment in Boston and they live in Florida during the winter. So they were snowbirds, and they offered their apartment to me and my mom. So we were able to stay there for 4 weeks, which was such a blessing because it allowed my husband to bring my kids up on the weekends so I could see them. So I guess just also ask friends and family, because people want to help you. So that's another option. And then once Evan was having his surgeries, I slept in the room with him. I never left. A lot of parents choose to go to a hotel overnight and that's their choice. But for me, I couldn't leave him. So I had the Inn at Longwood booked in case I needed a quick breather. But honestly, I probably went there just a handful of times. But I did find it useful that you could walk from the hotel to the hospital. I didn't want to be too far in case something happened.
No, and I think Inn at Longwood is great because especially if you're bringing up a mom or a husband, they have somewhere to rest and you have somewhere to rest.
Yeah,
I would
trade
on Britt that my husband and I, or a mom and grandmother or something, we never left our child's side. And I think it's so important in their recovery that somebody's always there. I really do. If you can try and make sure that somebody's always there. I think it even gets you discharged a little bit sooner because you're able to really see what's going on, if they need more pain medication. For me, I was breastfeeding, so I was there and slept there as well and was able to shower in our room, which was nice. But I also wanted to say, which I forgot to touch on in the beginning, which was out of kind of fate or something, West was rushed because he was in heart failure for his heart surgery, and Britt was having Evan at the same time. So we were at Boston Children's texting each other from Brigham's and from Boston, and both worried about each other and going, oh my gosh, when, she's like, I'm in labor. And I'm like, oh, Wes came out of heart surgery. And she's like, okay, how is he? So, I mean, it was just an incredible moment.
Yeah. Having that support, right?
That's great. I'm so glad you guys had each other throughout all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think, like Britt said, I don't think we would get through much without each other. And I think it's important to find your people going through this at the same time, because there is nothing I won't do when Evan has something going on. I would be there in a heartbeat if Britt needed me. And no matter what, I'm there on messaging to go, it's okay, breathe. Even if it's, I didn't like the way the cardio mobile thing we used showed his heartbeat, or I didn't like this, or I'm worried about that. It's just important to find your people in this, not to be alone. You're not alone. And at BCH, you're really not alone.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll move on to number 3. How do we know we are at the best hospital for our child's condition? And often parents don't realize they should get a second opinion. How do you get a second opinion?
Britt, do you want to start with this one?
I mean, how do you know you're at the best hospital? I think you have to keep checking in to make sure you still are at the best hospital. It's not like you just finally found it and you stay there. You're your child's best advocate. But in the beginning, when you're pregnant, you ask everyone. Like I began after I had my son's echo in utero, I asked the doctor who did it, who was an echocardiogram specialist, and she listed out the top 4 hospitals nearby. When I say nearby, I mean I could drive to, whether it was 2 or 4 or 5 hours away. And what I did then was I called each one and made appointments and visited each one, and they do echoes and EKGs, and they tell you what the surgical path would be for your baby. And to be honest, you hear different things. You expect to hear the same thing because it's a diagnosis. You would think every hospital has the same procedures, but they don't. So you need to do your homework, have 1, 2, 3, 4 opinions, and kind of go with your gut. I remember when I went to Boston, it was completely different. Some of the other hospitals, kind of maybe consider termination. But Boston, Dr. Rathod just said, nope, we've got this. He was so confident, and I loved that about him. He was kind of like, oh, I've got this. And I was like, what, really? So I knew that we were in the best of hands there. So much that instead of continuing here with a local cardiologist, which he said I could do, I would drive myself up every 2 weeks, and then it became every week, and then I had to move there. So that, just ask everyone, ask your pediatrician, ask your doctor. You can also do research.
Yeah, I think that's what you start to do. I think that's what I talked about in the beginning. It's that morning you wake up, whatever that morning is. I'm kind of using it as a metaphor, but it's that morning you wake up and go, I'm going to do anything to save my child and make sure he has or she has the absolute best care. And I was the same way as Britt, just researching, asking every doctor I had, every pediatrician. I even moved pediatricians because I didn't feel the one I was at wanted to research with me and wanted to find the best, was just kind of like drive to the closest place you can. And I moved to someone who was there with me holding my hand kind of. And then it was actually my OBGYN, after I was like at a bunch of different hospitals and not happy with what they were considering. And also was told maybe you should terminate at about 20 weeks. And I was like, there's just no way I'm figuring this out. I told the baby, like in my belly, I was like, we're going to figure this out no matter what. And my OBGYN has a brother who's a cardiologist, and he said he looked at everything of West, so just in utero, and he said, absolutely, you have to have Dr. Fulton, if you can get him, and Dr. Del Nido to do this valve work, because it's really intense valve work, and he's the best in the country, if not the world, for that. I had an hour-long conversation with him, and I was so calm and felt so like someone had just put their arms around me as a hospital and said, it's all going to be okay. And yes, we can figure it out together. And I think that's the way they've been. My husband reminded me, we just moved back from Europe after 4 years. And we moved there 6 months after West had 6-hour open heart surgery with Dr. Del Nido. And why would they be considered the best for letting us go there? Because they made sure we went there with a whole team on that side. Dr. Fulton connected me with cardiologists in Paris, and he also helped us with our LAD surgery. So with heterotaxy, you can have malrotated intestines, and Wes did while we were in Europe. So it was a surprise and very scary because it can be fatal within hours. And Dr. Fulton helped us get the gastrosurgeon in Paris and, kind of save West again in that sense. And they were there for us. So no matter where you are, Dr. Fulton, I live on the West Coast now, we're in Seattle and we're moving to Portland, and he finds with me our local cardiologist here. If we need surgery or big appointments, I come back to Boston no matter what, even from Europe, I flew back. But he finds my local cardiologists, and most of them trained under Boston Children's cardiologists. So that's a pretty amazing thing too. So it's always stays in the family. And I don't know if I probably wrote more down, but I'm trying not to be scripted here. If I'm talking too much, let me know. But I wanted to say, Britt and I talked about this, and maybe Britt can go on about this, but the cardiac ICU at Boston Children's. So every part from the moment you hand your child over to surgery to discharging after surgery, your hand is held the entire time. I am not exaggerating. From the moment you go into surgery, someone comes out and tells you each part of the surgery that's happening. And the nurses in the cardiac ICU are the best of the best. And I don't say that lightly. I think it's the reason Boston Children's, it's one of the reasons, obviously, every surgeons and cardiologists, but it's one of the reasons that your child does so well post-surgery. I've never seen anyone work the way they work and treat children as gently as they do in a post-op scenario. I have 5 children, so I've had other children in ICUs after birth, and I have a lot to compare to. I have never seen it in my life. It's extraordinary.
I mean, just to quickly mention, when you're doing your research, you also know how to have to dismantle what you're reading, because it can be misleading. For example, like the Newsweek ratings, I think Boston's not #1, though it should be. But a big part of the reason it's not #1 is because they take a lot of the children that all of the other hospitals turn away. So maybe the outcomes are not as good, but because they're taking on the hard cases. And if you visit conqueringchd.org, there's a part there that shows you how to dismantle data and statistics that you may come across. So I think it's important to know that.
Yes, and I think it's interesting. I'm in a group, if any of you have heterotaxy children, most of them have a CHD. So that's why I'm putting that out there. But I'm in a group called Heterotaxy Connection on Facebook. And I can't tell you, I'm on there every day. We're a really close-knit community. Every day, someone is telling someone who feels at a loss, like that everybody has turned them away, that they can't save their child. Every single day there is a thread. Go to Boston, go to Boston, go to Boston. I every day on that thread. So maybe that ends our, I could probably go on and on how you're at the best place, not to mention some of the smoothies that I love there. But
well, thank you both. That was very, very insightful and helpful information. So number 4, what kinds of questions should I ask the cardiologists and heart surgeons? How do you know what questions to ask when you really don't know much about the condition? And where do you even start?
For me, again, I'm going to mention conqueringchd.org. They actually have, which I think Casey will send you the link at the end of this, but they have questions written down for you, like what to ask this cardiac center, about your hospital stay and looking ahead. And I read over these again because it's been a while since he's had open heart. But to me, important ones are: how many procedures do you perform each year? How many did you perform in the last year, over 4 years? Because for obvious reasons, you want to make sure they're experienced, and they do a lot of these. Typical the surgery that you're looking for. What's the survival rate at the time of hospital discharge? After 1 year, how do the results compare to other centers? And Ali kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think it's incredibly important to make sure that the Heart Center has a devoted SICU, so a devoted cardiac ICU. I think that's something you just assume they have, but it's not. Not
No,
every
they,
hospital has one. And like Ali said, at the after post-surgery, a lot of their care and recovery is due to the nurses. They need to act quick and fast, and they need to know what they're doing. So I think that is very important. And then, I don't know, maybe what are the other things? Oh, how do they help you, when you're home, when you're waiting the surgery, or for me, like in between surgeries, do they just, are they in touch with you? What should they offer to help you? So I think those are some important questions. And again, if you want something more detailed, you can look at the website.
yeah, that's a great website. I think it's been a kind of like a Bible for us, just going over there. And then I think the question is, what do you ask? How do you know what questions to ask? What should you ask? I wrote, in my notes here, everything with an exclamation point. Write down all of your questions. We created a notebook. I still have it and I still use it for West when he was in my belly. And we used it after, just like, what kind of medications do you think we need? All the doctors, all their phone numbers, all the websites we need, all the, housing, everything. So everything for having a heart warrior. Also, I think the fear we have as parents comes in the unknown. There are no stupid questions ever, ever. You can't be like, oh, well, I'm not a cardiologist, so I wouldn't know. We told them, we want to know everything in the surgery process, from anesthesia to incision to bypass. What will things be like after? There are no wrong questions. We ask for drawings, layman terms. You have to be your child's advocate, and you want to know everything you can in a way that you can understand it. So there are no wrong questions. And if anything, they want to talk about it. And now I like, at a certain point a couple of years ago, I was like, maybe I'll become a cardiologist, because I started loving it so much. I can't with 5 kids. I have other things but that's how much I grew to love researching it and finding out about it, and then asking the questions that I needed to ask. And I have to say, a 3-ring binder or notebook, if you're starting on this journey, is such a wonderful thing to have. You can always write down questions that you're thinking of while you're in your car that you may forget when you're in the room with your doctors or your surgeon. I don't know. I hope that helped on that one.
Oh, that was great. And yeah, I will be sharing some resources and links to various websites, including pages on our own website, in the Facebook event, or through a post or something, so that it's all in one place for anyone who's interested in using those. Okay, so moving on to number 5, will I have support from Boston Children's at home while we wait for surgery, and what type of support?
I think I'll let Britt take this one over. I think because
Okay.
Britt had more support at home. I'll say quickly, our cardiologist was in touch with us no matter what. I would say that was my support before surgery and after. And then a nurse, every time we had a sedated echo, would follow up 3 to 4 days after that. To make sure everything was okay. We were seeing a local cardiologist before surgery as well, and they also spoke, which I think is important. That's why Boston Children is so wonderful as well. They have a very open door if you're far away, that they can speak with that cardiologist. But I'm going to let Britt take this over.
In between surgeries for Evan, the interstage between birth and his first open heart is the most risky for him. It's the largest time when babies pass away. I don't want to mention that, but they offer you a nutritionist, a nurse, and also visiting nurse services. And so for Evan, I had a journal that the hospital gave me. We wrote down his birth weight, how much he was drinking, his oxygen, everything. And I would speak to the nurse and to the nutritionist weekly. And so if they saw that he wasn't gaining appropriate weight, they would ask us to fortify the breast milk more. So I never felt alone. And like Ali said, it's important to have a good local cardiologist for an emergency, and to make sure that they are willing to communicate openly with Boston. Boston will have no issues communicating with them. So you're not left in the dark. They're there with you every moment.
Yes. And I have to say, I even called Dr. Fulton for slight worries when we were living in Europe, he was my go-to. So Boston Children's was my go-to no matter where I'm living. I think that's important to say, because they are there no matter what. I just emailed and it's like, well, my husband got a new job in Portland. We just moved back from Europe in Seattle, and now we're going to Portland. And our cardiologist is like, great, these are the two people I would recommend highly there. And it just makes you feel like you're never free falling, right? You always have someone there to catch you. And I think it's important when you're going through what you're going through with your child to always know that you have that there. I've not experienced that before. And again, we had a very, very sick child, our second, in an ICU in California. And to this day, I can't believe night and day. The treatment was night and day from when we got to Boston. And also the hospitals, again, back to that question on how do you know you're at the best, is where West was born, which was not Boston Children's or Brigham's. So many things were missed. So many things were missed about the heterotaxy that gratefully Dr. Del Nido found in surgery. Gratefully. So anyway, let's move on to the fun.
I just have one thing to add about this question, and it's not while you're awaiting surgery, but just the support Boston offers. And Evan went into arrhythmia in April, which was a new problem, and a problem we didn't know he had. He told me his stomach hurt, and I asked him to point where. He touched his heart. So I put his pulse ox on immediately, and his heart rate was 250. And this is after like a year of no issues. So I went into panic mode. I was home alone with my 4 kids. I texted Rathod. I call him Rathod, Dr. Rathod. And he called me immediately. He helped me put on this device we have at home where we can do an EKG. I sent it to him over text. He looked at it and he said, get in the car and go to the ER. So I did that. He called ahead. They were expecting me when I arrived. He was on the phone with the doctors there when I got into the ER, and he literally instructed them what to do for Evan, because a lot of local hospitals, and we're only an hour from New York City, don't know what to do with half a heart. So he actually told them what to do. And I'm so thankful that, I had his cell phone number, that he did this for me, because I don't know what would have happened to Evan if he wasn't there. So you'll never feel like left alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Both. Okay, number 6. What do I bring to the hospital for my child and for me?
You want to think, not that we all haven't been living in sweats right now. If you're headed there right now, hopefully you've bought a lot online, but comfortable, cozy, soft sweats for you, slippers, a favorite blanket for you as well as your child. And then I really just decorated West's space with things he was used to in his room. And then I also put on his crib pictures of his siblings. So when he was able to start turning, he could see them. I had his favorite stuffy that he always had was underneath his head for recovery from the cardiac ICU onto the big boy room. I think this one's a pretty easy one. Again, just really, I find that the best thing for baby is the button ones, the button onesie, because you can fit the wires through the buttons easily. You don't want to do any zipper. And funny enough, we did the diaper a lot of the time, just the diaper, because they have so much going on, especially until they take out the one thing, I can't remember the chest tube. We just had him in a diaper because it was just so much easier, and it is kept temperate, and they would swaddle him if we needed. And the same thing when we did surgery in Paris as well. I kind of kept him in the diaper until I felt felt really okay and not in pain. And then we started putting the button onesies on. The button onesies, Britt and I would really love to create something that's easier, right, inpatient, to have all that,
Well, it's harder when the kids are older to find button downs, but what I did was I bought the 2-piece PJs and I brought them to the dry cleaner, and they actually cut the top and added buttons. So that was a lot more helpful for when he wasn't a baby. And just adding on to what Allie suggested was just imagine you're living in a dorm room
Yeah,
and like,
that's a
those
great
are the things as a mom that you need to bring. So maybe flip-flops for the shower. And I found comfort bringing my own pillow and an egg crate to sleep on because I stayed with him. And also healthy snacks for your children because they really want to see your kids eating. And if you have a picky toddler, which most are, and they don't want to eat the cafeteria food, that's going to be a problem. So bring food that they like, that they can eat, so the doctors can see that they're eating, and that will help you get out quicker.
Yeah,
And
give you
lastly, like if you're breastfeeding, for me, I was pumping, so I found it useful to have a bottle brush to clean the bottles and soap, and just stuff to keep the pumps clean and somewhere to dry it.
Yeah, yeah, and bring your toiletries you love. You may be there 6 days, you may be there 3 weeks, bring your shampoo you love, bring all the things you love to smell on yourself that give you comfort. Bring your iPad, bring your Netflix, bring your Amazon Prime, like all your movies and shows you love. And also, I'm gonna say this, don't be afraid to watch comedies. I think when we were first going into surgery and stuff, my husband and I were so serious, and we'll talk about this in the last question with, will you have normal again? But we were so serious and so stressed and so like, what's going to happen, even at birth and then surgery. And my sister and brother-in-law were with us for our surgery, and they started to tell jokes. And it helped us so much. And it was just like being able to laugh, being able to smile in that time. Like if you have a favorite comedy show, like watch Modern Family all over again, the whole, every season. And it just helps in those times to, again, all comfort and just like we said before, caring for yourself, because you can't be 100% for your child if you're not caring for yourself. Yeah, and I think that goes into, you started to the breastfeeding is the next question, Casey.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. So you mentioned that you were able to breastfeed your CHD baby, Britt, in the hospital. So if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Sure. I'm not going to pressure breastfeeding because it was really difficult for me for my first two, and they didn't have heart problems. So don't beat yourself up if you can't. The reason I chose to do it, and I did it for a year, which is the longest I've ever done it for any of my children, is because the surgeon said it's better for him. And I was able to do it. But I don't want to pressure anyone into doing it. I didn't actually put him on my breast, but I used a pump. I did that for two reasons. One, his identical twin went back home to Connecticut. So I wanted to be able to drive him some breast milk home and free some for him. And secondly, when they're newborns, they really want to see weight gain. Like that's one of the biggest reasons you stay back at the hospital, not really that they're in danger with their heart, but it's weight. So I saw that he was eating better with a bottle. Like he would just fall asleep on my breast. And they only give you 30 minutes to feed them because they believe if they eat past that, then they're burning too many calories. So for me, it was just more efficient. He got more and he gained more weight. And that's why I pumped and put it into a bottle. And the hospital will have everything you need there. You can rent a pump, you can buy a lot of the pieces, and they also have a refrigerator and freezer for you.
Yeah,
so
and
it's doable.
What was great during surgery, they gave me a private room with a curtain. They had a pump there for me. They had all the supplies. And this is just surgery. I thought, like, do I have to bring my pump? Do I have to bring the bottles? And they had everything there. And
yeah, you're right. They have a pump, the big pumps in the rooms.
They have it there, that Medela, amazing one that could basically get milk for 10 years. But yeah, so they had that and they stored it for me during surgery, and then they had a bottle ready. So once West was no longer intubated and they said he can try and start feeding, it was just, whether you're doing formula or breast milk, it was just the best moment to give them that bottle after surgery. And then I was able to put West to my breast. And I think, again, bottle or breast, fed is best, loved is best. As soon as you're able to hold them, once they're in the big kid room, after the cardiac ICU, it's so important, however you're feeding them, to give that touch each time you're feeding them. And I think it, again, helps in the recovery. But I was able to feed West from birth, and right after surgery, and for 2 years after. Yeah, we did, but which I loved. But yes, but again, I think Britt and I, it's so important for all moms to know that fed is best. There's no one right way or wrong way.
Great to know. Thank you guys. Just for the interest of time, we have around 10 minutes until we want to start to close and ask questions. But we have around 5-ish questions just to let you know, from a timing standpoint. But the next question we have on the list is, what is it like when your child comes out of surgery, from the ICU to the CICU? How do you navigate this intense moment? I can imagine it's very, very emotional.
I mean, honestly, I was prepared because Allie had sent me pictures of Wes, told me what to expect. And I was just so relieved that he was out of surgery, that that moment wasn't as bad for me as while he was in surgery. So I think you just run on adrenaline and you power through, like with no sleep, because it's loud. There's a lot of beeping noises. There's nurses and doctors in and out, but somehow you get through it. Looking back, I don't know how you do it, but you do.
Yeah, I think it was, again, it's important, we can go quickly through this one because it's important to have a community on that. I wanted to put this question in our questions because I had a Boston Children's mom called me at home. This is before I knew Britt. It was just, maybe it was when I knew Britt, when you were pregnant, but, and she said to me that was the biggest shock for her, was seeing her child come out, and no one had prepared her. So I do this with my work with other moms who I help, who need help transferring hospitals and different things for their children who've not been cared for well. But no matter what, I tell them about post-surgery because it can be shocking if you don't know what to expect. Whether they're intubated, they're hooked up to a lot of wires, their scar sometimes can be open. So it's just good to know. And it's one of the things I sat down with Britt before Evan had surgery, and my husband and I both sat down with her husband and said, we want to prepare you for this. And I think preparing you for that makes it not shocking and makes you able to have blinders like Britt has talked about in the past and be there, by their side. And again, it's that cardiac ICU. So they also put you at ease right away. They're like helming a ship, and they've got it in a storm. And I think they've seen every storm from a hurricane to a tornado. And these nurses are like, calm, and you feel better right away. But it's important to know that it can be shocking, and that'll just help you in the moment that's post-surgery.
Thank you. I know you guys kind of touched on this, especially Britt. Will I need equipment to monitor my child at home? How do I administer medicine to an unwilling child? What if I have questions or feel overwhelmed? I know you mentioned Dr. Athad always being one call or text away. So we touched on that a little bit, but if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Quickly, yes, your cardiologist is always there. And before they let you leave the hospital, you go through a CPR training course. So that's helpful. And they also make you do all the meds, I think for 24 hours, just to make sure that you're well equipped, you know what you're doing. So that was also helpful. And I found it useful to crush Evan's medicine and put baby food on top of it and give it to him on a spoon. And if it's liquid, you can put it in a little cup and bury it in chocolate pudding or whatever, and just scoop it into their mouth that way. If you put it into a bottle and they don't finish the bottle, then you've lost medicine. But they won't let you go home unless you're well prepared.
And chocolate is your friend when they're older. Like chocolate really masks so much. And also I did for West, also I had a little syringe, and I would do it the back corner of his mouth and immediately start breastfeeding. So that would help him swallow it as well. But after that, Hershey syrup works great, and baby food, like you said.
Awesome. Those are definitely some helpful tips. Okay, number 10, what could I do as a parent to help my child during recovery? When should I call if I have a question?
Is this during recovery? So the way I looked at this was recovery at the hospital. So when you're at Boston Children's during recovery and you're there, they allow you to take the child to X-ray or to CAT scan or to get their chest tubes pulled. And I think it's important that you are there for it. your children won't look at you like you're doing the pain to them. I think I worried about that. Like, well, hey, if I'm with him during all these painful things, he's going to blame me for the pain. But they don't. The bond that I have with Evan is incredible, and he trusts me. And anytime he goes to Boston, he wants me there. And also be honest with your child. If they're going to pull the chest tubes out, don't tell them it's not going to hurt, because then they will not trust you as a parent. So I did. I told him, this is going to hurt, but very fast. It was like almost like a pinch, and then it's over. So you do have to be honest. And he is now almost 5, and he loves going to Boston Children's. He's not afraid of it. And so I think it's just important to be honest to a certain extent.
Yeah, I second all that you said. And I think I do. And I think just for me, it was being there for him, feeding him. It was the time I started meditating, as as silly as that can be. I realized when I was calm, he was calm. And I think that's such an important part. Kind of like the bond you get with your child. West is the same, even in just his, bi-yearly appointments. He's like a rock star when he walks into that echo, and when he walks into that, he's just amazing. And he's ready for it. And he says he wants to be a doctor to help other heart babies. They really, they know so much more than we think. And also just don't be afraid to call for any reason. Once you get home from surgery, during surgery in the hospital, when you don't see your doctor for, like a day, again, it comes back to a question we asked before. Never hesitate to call if you feel something, ever.
Awesome. Next one is, what do I tell my friends and family? How do you keep loved ones updated without stressing yourself out?
I'll take this quickly and then I'll let Britt go. But my sister again, we don't know if this is, I'm kind of doing abroad and then in surgery. So in surgery, my sister had a group chat that was our best friend and family. So like immediate family. And, so she would give updates. So my husband and I didn't even have to think about it. So she was there. And if you can't have someone there now because of COVID, just have that chat with them that you're telling them the updates, and then they tell everybody else. And then turn off your WhatsApp beeping for random friends from Facebook who are like, so is he great now? And then we were very open on social media about what was going on. And I think that only benefited us, because I found Britt and I found people who helped me. I found my heterotaxy group. I found everything. Again, my Facebook is private. It's not a public Facebook. So the people that I have on it are my friends. So they really helped me in that situation. And also it's great to have all those prayers happening when your child's in surgery, or you're worried and your child's in your belly still and you're worried about it. Okay.
And I agree with Allie, basically everything she said. You can be as open as you want or as closed as you want. It's your family, it's your child. And also don't get insulted with what people may say to you, because honestly, they don't know what to say. They haven't been in your shoes. So if someone makes a ridiculous comment, like to me, Evan has half a heart. Oh, so he's had his surgery, so he'll be fine now, right? And I'm like, no, he has half a heart, but they don't know what to say. So just be grateful that they're asking and that they're supporting you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's great insight. Okay, for our last question, this is kind of an open-ended one, but something you touched upon a little bit before. Will life ever be normal again?
I mean, for me, and I'll answer this quickly because I know we're short on time, but I remember the moment I found out, I thought I would be sad for the rest of my life. Like I did. I thought it would just overcome me. But I try to explain to people who do not have a child that is ill or has been through something like this. It's almost as if you have a sixth sense, like you see the world differently, like you feel so much deeper, like life just becomes more beautiful. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm going to try not to cry. But if anything, life has become better with him. I don't like to see him go through pain. But if as mothers, if we were able to choose our children, I would have picked Evan like over and over and over again.
Yeah, I would say now that I'm crying, I second all that you have said. And My husband and I often step back and look down at West and go, could you imagine if we didn't have these moments? Could you imagine him not being here? And there's nothing in the world um, that could stop us from having him and getting the care we needed so that he's here and healthy and thriving. And I believe, life doesn't stop when you have a heart warrior, it evolves and you find a new normal. And there is going to be those moments where I went home to visit Britt and I stayed with her for a month with West, and Evan and West just played for a whole month. And it was like they were just toddlers running around her backyard and going down slides. And, you know, we don't know what the future holds for any of us, right? From the moment we walk out our door right now. But what we know is, I think there's been studies, and Britt has read this as well, that the heart patients who are alive today, who are adults, said the biggest thing they wished was that everyone treated them like their other siblings or like a normal kid when they were feeling good. And even when they're not, when they're in their hospital, they want to play their games and do everything. It's so important to just let them be who they are. And, like, again, it was back to Boston Children's kind of giving us the green light to explore Europe with West. He saw 16 countries before his 4th birthday, and they gave us the security that we had all the people around us in Europe that we could go to in case of an emergency, and that we were able to do something like that. I have been able to go on mom weekends by myself or with a girlfriend and have fun. And again, I think Britt and I both talked about this yesterday, just that it's a new normal, but it's extraordinary.